is I know that the conference kind of did a land acknowledgement at the beginning, so we also want to do one, but we want to keep it a little shorter. So I'll just go ahead and say and acknowledge that UC San Diego is on the unceded territory of the Kumeyaay peoples, and that they are still the natural stewards of the land. And Mariah, I believe there was something we wanted to add in here.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention that like it's important to not just acknowledge the land, we should also support the Kumeyaay community. So I just put in the chat a link to donate to Kumeyaay efforts to preserve land.
Awesome, thank you. So, all right, cool. Let's get right into it then. So this is the Kumeyaay Garden Committee. I'll start off with my introduction. My name is Samuel Lucero. I am a fourth-year student at UC San Diego from Taos Pueblo out in New Mexico, and I am the garden coordinator for the Native American Student Alliance.
And I am Mariah Hayes. I'm the NASA co-chair for this year, communication major, and I am Tlingit from like kind of like Juneau area of Alaska. Yeah.
And hi everyone, my name is Naomi. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a director at the Student Sustainability Collective, which is part of the Student Sustainability Resource Center on campus. And yeah, I'll pass it to Autumn.
Hi, I'm Autumn Saragosa. My pronouns are she and they. I'm Kuya and Tongva. I'm currently the Access Coordinator for the Native American Student Alliance on campus, and I'm a second-year art history student for UCSD.
Yeah, so we kind of wanted to start off this event today talking a little bit about the garden itself, how we got where we are today, and kind of that process, how that process has been for all of us. So I guess we can just get right into the questions.
So Sam, what is the Kumeyaay Garden and how did it start?
Thanks. So the Kumeyaay Garden is a green space on campus that kind of draws attention to the continued perseverance of Native peoples, and specifically the Kumeyaay peoples at UC San Diego. And it's a space where we really wanted to be able to build community with not only UC San Diego students, but the greater Native community in the San Diego area. And I mean, it's been a long time coming, and it's been a long process to get where we are today. We've been working on this project for 2 or 3 years now, and we finally have a pretty like solid spot in front of the Marshall Admin building where we're all settled in. We recently planted everything again. But how it kind of started was a few years back when I was the co-chair for NASA, actually. My co-chair and I were thinking of sort of a kind of project that we could do to bring attention and like create this sort of green space that I've been talking about a little bit. And our initial idea was also a sort of garden thing, maybe focused a little bit around food sustainability or sustainable living practices with food specifically, and with plants that are native to the area that UCSD is on. So while we were thinking about this, it was actually a little funny because Azriel, the director of corporate accountability for the Student Sustainability Center, reached out to us. Honestly, I want to say like 2 or 3 weeks after we had initially started talking about it amongst ourselves, with a very similar idea that she also wanted to create a green space and bring attention to these sort of environmental justice issues that or create a green space that can bring attention to these issues. And so we met up and we were talking about it maybe for another week or so, and again things just kind of aligned and happened, and Jonathan Kim from Thurgood Marshall College reached out to us, and he was also interested in doing a garden project. So I don't know what was happening then, but we were all kind of focused on this having this green space on campus. And it really worked out because none of us knew each other beforehand, except that my co-chair and I. But we all somehow found each other and were able to come together and really get this project rolling and hit the ground running with it.
Thank you. So how did this team seek to involve members of the UCSD community and beyond?
Yeah, so when we started, we wanted to get some ideas of what the process was like of getting a garden on campus. It's something, there are community gardens at UCSD, but none that specifically spotlighted or focused on native plants or plants native to the Kumeyaay territory. So we reached out to Persephone Lewis from University of San Diego because they had recently brought up a Kumeyaay garden on their own campus. And we ended up visiting their campus. We met with their Native American Student Alliance or the equivalent and kind of went through their garden, looked at what they had there, got some ideas for plants that we could include there or that we could include in our own, and went from there. And we also reached out to various Kumeyaay ethnobotanists. We visited another native garden at Cal State San Marcos to get again a better idea of what we could have in our own garden. But it was really key for us to involve members of the UCSD native community, because even though we want this to be a space for students at UC San Diego and a space that students at UCSD can use, we really wanted it to be an inclusive space for the native community. And we wanted it to be a spot where people could come in from outside UCSD and have some knowledge of, the plants that we have there, and maybe get a little bit of, like a little bit of recognition of home or nostalgia or something like that. So yeah, we had reached out to various advisors. One of our main advisor was Christy Orozco, and she really helped us out with solidifying our plant list and making sure that we had a solid group of plants that we could facilitate workshops around and share some knowledge. Yeah,
that all sounds like really amazing work, and thank you for starting that, because I know that we wouldn't have been able to do as much this year without it. So how would you describe your experience working with the garden?
Yeah, my experience, it's been a long one. It's it's definitely been a long journey, but it's been well worth it. There are a lot of times we were rushing when we had the initial garden planting to kind of get it up and running for the grand opening event that we put on a couple years back. And then I want to say a couple months after that, we had to tear everything back down because they were doing construction at New Six College. And we had to wait maybe a year or so until we could go back and replant everything. But when we were finally able to go back and really get in there, we hadn't seen each other in person, at least outside of Zoom, for however many months since COVID had hit. And so it was really good to kind of just bring everyone together again. And I think personally for me, my favorite part of working on this garden project has been the planting times and just going to go visit the garden, because there's something about working with the earth that I feel really grounds you and centers you. And it's kind of it's like working with your ancestors and taking care of ancestors as well, because they persevered and got us to a point where we can be where we are now, UC San Diego students working on this project. But now it's kind of our turn to repay that favor and take care of them as well.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Those amazing answers. But now for Mariah. The first question is, as someone who attended the original grand opening, what was your impression of the event?
Yeah, so actually when I was when I went to the grand opening, it was kind of like a by chance thing. I feel like it was just like my ancestors guiding me to it or something, because I was just like walking in between classes, like, and I saw that, like, you know, like what was going on, and it sounded like it looked really interesting. So I just kind of sat down, and I think I got there just in time for like the bird songs. And it was just like really, really beautiful. And I remember getting like really emotional, even though I didn't really know too much about it. Like I knew, like I could feel the healing moment of it. Like you can just kind of feel like the communal healing, even though it was like, you know, a small patch of land, it was still just like meant so much. And yeah, I could just really feel like it was just really, really powerful. And I think maybe that's probably why I was drawn to it too, is because of how much power that really brought out.
Thanks. That's really important. I feel like you mentioned how powerful it felt, even just like walking by, and you already knew. So the next question is, what has it been like seeing the garden progress to where it is now today?
Yeah, so the original like garden that like we went for the grand opening, unfortunately, like they had to, you know, because of the construction, they had to tear it all up. But at the same time, like this year planning around that and like seeing the progress, like it kind of like makes me hopeful that even the like even with, you know, the constant construction, because that's gonna still happen. Like I'm pretty sure they already have plans to tear up this area too later, like down the line, like 10 years. But despite that, like I think this year really proved that no matter what, like we can still have it on campus, like even with the constant construction. And you know, like we can still have a really like powerful place. And also like I feel like we got more space this time around. So hopefully, you know, like as time progresses, we can just keep like, you know, slowly push that space bigger and bigger. And yeah, just like really expand the garden and just like make it take over UCSD campus. I'm kidding, but yeah.
That is an amazing goal, I think. And I think even though like you're laughing about it, I think it's really important for students at UCSD to be very aware, because there's still so many students that probably might not even know whose land they're on. So, but thank you, Mariah.
So Naomi, what does student solidarity mean at UCSD to you?
So first, like I know Azriel's in the Zoom, but I just want to say thank you to her. And they've taught me so much over the past couple of months and even the past year. But so student solidarity to me is very important because on campus, even today, we have so many different movements. We have so many different causes that students are advocating for. And we're constantly fighting for those resources, for those spaces on campus. And so while we're doing that, it's very important to like recognize that we do have privileges while being that student, especially like myself at UCSD, because our institutions as a UC system as a whole continue to be a settler institution, a colonial institution. And so as a student here, we could continue to perpetrate that settler colonialism if we're not choosing to unlearn those ideologies or be critical of what they're teaching us here and what space we're taking up on campus. So it's important to just reflect on that position as a settler and think about how my actions moving forward in my experience at UCSD, and how I can make it different and choose to be in solidarity with Indigenous sovereignty and Indigenous movements, and really listen to Indigenous people and needs, and continue to put an effort there, not only on campus, but translate it into my everyday life and help other people, especially like my family and friends, continue to learn along with me as well. But yeah, I might have said that a little too fast, so I'm so sorry. But yes.
No, no worries. You did great. And that was a really great answer. Thank you for that, Naomi. So, Autumn, I know that you are relatively new to the garden project. So we wanted to kind of ask you a little bit about what inspired you to work on this project and get involved.
So for me, I was really drawn to this project because firstly, I love working with plants. I love working with the earth. It just makes me feel really nice. And I also feel like when you take care of other things, it does something to you where you feel like a connection and power. And I think with this project specifically, you gain a lot of indigenous knowledge that we've lost. And so even though this is knowledge that like should be known to us, we don't have access to it because our education systems are colonialized, and so are our minds. So I think a lot of it is about decolonizing our minds and trying to get back what we lost while also connecting to the earth and becoming more involved in our communities. And so that's what this is for me a lot. Like it's a healing process, a reclaiming of culture, and also just having a lot of fun while doing it because I get to like make connections with really great people.
Thank you. That was a beautiful answer. um, so well, a couple of us are going to be graduating this year and leaving the project in definitely very capable hands. But what would you say are some project goals that you have for next year for the garden?
So some project goals that I have, definitely. So we were talking about grand reopening for the garden. Hopefully we can do that soon. Finally get a plaque put there so that way it's not just like the plants out by themselves. Um, we're also working on a website. So hopefully we can get that up and running by next year so that way we can do more outreach. And I also wanted to see if we could do more programs like this to educate people because I feel like a lot of folks don't know that the garden even exists and it's something that you just kind of walk by. And so it'd be important to do more programs where people can understand the significance of the garden, why it's there, and just the benefits the plants bring to UCSD and to the people.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing some of those events go on next year, and hopefully I'll be able to make it to some of them as well. Yeah, thank you everyone for sharing and for all of your wonderful answers. I think we'll move out of our Kumeyaay Garden community panel here and bring in some of the community members that really helped us get this project up and running, and really could not have been where we are without all of your help. So we'll get right into that. We'll start off with, oh, did I skip a slide? Uh-oh, our slides are all out of order. Sorry, y'all. We'll start off with Corinne. She is Catawba, and she is the Facilities and Operations and Student Programs Coordinator of the Intertribal Resource Center at UCSD. So, Corinne, I believe you're in here, right?
Yes, I am.
Awesome.
Hi, thank you
Hello.
so much for having me on today. And I just want to say I'm super proud of everybody here for, bringing this garden to fruition. And I remember when it started and it was a lot of work for you all. So you should all be very proud of yourself, but I think you know that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So we have a few questions prepared. So what is the role of the Intertribal Resource Center at UCSD? For those who might not be too familiar.
Yeah, so the ITRC, it's the Intertribal Resource Center. And on campus, you could divide the ITRC's role into two areas. First is providing physical space, programs, community, and advocating for Native American students at UCSD. And then the second one is providing educational opportunities for the campus community on Native American contemporary issues, histories, cultures, etc. Both of these roles ultimately lead to advocacy for Native American communities at the university. And a few of the larger programs that the ITRC puts on for the campus is the Native American Heritage Month that we have during November. And this is where we host film screenings guest speakers, and cultural programming. And we also help students with the student-led powwow. That's every May. We had actually this year we had our first virtual one, but it's a public program. It's for the campus, and it's also for the Native community, or for everybody who wants to come to learn a little bit about powwow culture. But and then we also have a lot of other smaller programs throughout the year. We have our language and culture table, which is one that we're super proud of, because that was one that was actually started by students as well. And it's an opportunity for everybody to talk about their own tribal traditions. And in fact, a number of you here on this call have been the leaders for this program. And we also actually, because we don't have an official tribal liaison for the campus, we also informally are the tribal liaison for UCSD for the Kumeyaay community, and then also for like an urban community, the larger Native community in San Diego and our region as well.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely a lot of outreach and access programs and retention programs within UCSD, all super amazing. So thank you for putting all those on. So as a UCSD community member and the coordinator at the ITRC, why do you believe it's important for students to advocate for projects focused on Native representation?
Well, it's important for the campus community to understand whose land the campus resides on and the benefits afforded to all students, faculty, and staff members by learning and working at a university that benefits from the unceded territories of Native people. And in this case, in UCSD's case, it's of the Kumeyaay people. I believe that a lot of the injustices continued to be done and inequities experienced in our communities are mostly because people are uneducated or undereducated about our histories, our cultures, and the mere fact that we're still here. And so I think it's also important for all to understand that our traditional forms of knowledge are as powerful and robust as Western educational traditions. And our ancestors were scientists and scholars in their own right. And I think everybody is at a disadvantage when such a large portion of human experience and knowledge is excluded from educational settings.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So the next, oh, sorry.
No, I'm good.
Cool. Okay. The next community member we'd like to bring up is Persephone Hooper Lewis. She is a citizen of the Yamba Band of Shoshone Indians and the tribal liaison for the University of San Diego, as well as a professor of practice in the Ethnic Studies department. So if you'd like to cover a little bit more, Percy, or just go right into it, let me know.
Let's just go right into it. You have such a great intro already all planned for me. Thank you.
Of course, of course. All right, so.
Thank you for joining us. Sorry. Sam, do you want to move to the question?
Yeah.
Sorry. So Percy, what do you do as the tribal liaison for USD?
So I have to say there's a difference between what I do and what my job description says I do. So at USD, unfortunately, we have very few, well, I guess it's similar to UC San Diego. We have, first of all, we're a small college. We only have 8,000 total undergrad and grad students. So we're a lot smaller than UC San Diego, but we are very much lacking in faculty, in staff, and also students. So I end up doing everything Native at USD. So if students have a project where they want to look at indigenous uses of pitcher plants, I'll get an email and they'll want to meet with me. So it ends up being everything. What I'm supposed to do is 4 areas: educate the campus community about Native American issues. And my teaching kind of falls underneath that. I teach courses in the Ethnic Studies department on Indigenous Native American Studies. And also a bio course called Integrating Indigenous and Western science, which I co-teach with an actual scientist, a botanist. But I educate the campus community. I engage the local tribal communities. We are also situated on Kumeyaay land, so I definitely prioritize Kumeyaay tribal needs. So we work a lot with Verona, Viejas, some work with Mountain Empire, and then Rincon Education Department. We're actually doing a garden project with them right now, which is really exciting. And then I also do some retention work with our Native students. We have about 90 total Native students on campus. A lot of them, they self-identify. So I would guess maybe 15 to 20% actually like know the tribes that they're from, are connected to their identities. And then the last thing I do is, what do I do? What's the last thing I do? I don't know. There's something else. I feel like everything just jumbles together. I tried really hard to have boundaries and say, these are the 4 things I do. But there's so much need, and which is not fair. It is not fair that the university asked me to do everything, because really they should just hire more Native people. And people with expertise in different areas, because just because you're Native doesn't mean you know about everything that is Native American. But yeah, so I do a lot at USD. I think really the main thing I'm supposed to do is really serve as an advisor to the campus community. My job was the second tribal liaison position in San Diego County, and so we really fashioned it after the tribal liaison position at Cal State San Marcos. And that is what Tishmal Turner is really charged with.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all of your work. I know it's really, really important. And even though it can get too much, it's just still important. And hopefully you can get more coworkers, Native coworkers soon. So was the USD Garden Project student-led or was it admin-led?
So our project took years and years and years. So it's so cool that at your campus, students were able to say, hey, we want this. And then we're really able to get the support to get it done. At USD, it took years. Our garden, our native plant garden actually started, it was student-led. It was post 9/11. And some students in a bio class wanted to be able to have a garden that was all native plants. I don't know if any of you have been to University of San Diego. We were always voted top 10 most beautiful campus. And the reason why is because everything on our campus is like invasive and colonial. So we have tons of roses, we have tons of grass, like all of these really water intensive plants. And the students recognized that and they wanted to have a garden. One of the students came from a background where there was money, so he was able to get his parents to donate. So the project actually was student-led out of this class, and they planted, and our garden is bigger than yours, but way smaller than Cal State San Marcos's garden, but they wanted to have all native plants. So that's kind of how it started out, and it was, 2002, I believe, is when they were able to get the garden. And then the garden also included a piece that was like a commemoration for 9/11. So we had that, and then an ethnic studies class renamed it. Like it was just a thing where students were like, in the faculty for the class said, we're going to take this garden, it's all native plants, to Kumeyaay territory, and we're going to name it the Kumeyaay Garden. And that happened in 2009. They renamed it. And so I never knew that it had this history of being a different garden. It used to be called the Tecolote Hope Garden. I didn't even know that. I just always thought it was the Kumeyaay Garden. And then in 2015, we really started efforts to have the garden renamed the Kumeyaay Garden and to replant because a number of the plants had died. And so we had, we formed a committee, and it was folks from all over campus, but the students who were on the committee and part of this work really were central. They were involved in ASG, our student government. Our student government has a huge budget, like $1.4 million. They pay a huge activity fee. And they were able to really push, and they were willing to pay for it. But then through conversations with the president, the students were able to get the president to donate $50,000, which was for the garden. And then also we contracted with Johnny Bear Contreras, who you all know, because he's done projects, did a project with UCSD, and he created a sculpture, which is at the entrance of our garden. So, I mean, students are so central to the work that we want to do because nobody listens to staff. They kind of listen to faculty more than staff, but when students get involved, it's a whole different level. And students also come with a lot of resources. At UC San Diego, our students fund a lot of the student affairs work. So the president really listened. And we were able to, plant a garden and really involve students. Students have been central. Also, the course I teach, students are central. They take care of the garden, really. So yeah, go students. Y'all are powerful.
Thank you so much for joining us and sharing. I'll definitely have to take a trip down to see your garden.
Yeah, so it's gonna be over. I'll take you to lunch.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. So now we're joined with Christy Orozco. She is a member of the San Pascal Band of Indians, and she's a resource specialist for Sichuan Museum Culture Center and Emergency Operations Specialist for the Indian Health Council, California. She facilitated installation of native plant gardens throughout the county on Indian reservations and multiple public spaces and on university campuses. She teaches college courses focusing on biodiversity, ethnobotany of native plants, and impacts of climate change. Thank you for joining us, Christy.
Thank you for having me. I'm Christy Orozco. I'm a student. Can everybody hear me all right?
It's a little choppy, but we can hear your audio coming in.
Try this. Is that better?
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Hauka, Christy Orozco, Winichuhi, San Pascual Matkopai. I'm from the northwest corner of the Kumeyaay Nation, and I lived there all my life. And I'm really happy to be at UCSD for my master's program at Scripps Institute of Oceanography. I'm in the process of getting my master's in biodiversity and conservation from Scripps. So it's really great because my undergrad, I was able to focus on the biodiversity and ethnobotany of the terrestrial environment of Southern California. And now being at Scripps, I'm able to focus on coastal marine interspaces and the impacts of the coastal environment on our resources, and also to advocate for increased coastal protections. And so I'm really excited to be working at Scripps right now with under the tutelage of Dr. Kyolo Fox and Isabella Colazo. So, and also at Cal State San Marcos under the tutelage of Dr. Bonnie Bade. And so through those avenues, I've been able to work with and teach ethnobotany on different levels throughout the county, throughout the region. And I currently assist and provide service over at the Sequan Indian Reservation. And Sequan is not too far from campus. It has a really great museum. And I work with archaeological liaison and the natural resource, cultural resource liaisons. And so that's basically, I said all that so I could explain that what I hope to do at UCSD is to gain better understanding of how climate change is affecting Southern California and the red flags and triggers and different indicators that we are going to be witnessing and that we need to be monitoring as a community. So with this level of technical capacity and knowledge that I'm gaining at Scripps, I'm going to be able to utilize technical devices such as like infrared drones to assess the health of the biodiversity of our region. And with that data, I'm going to be able to establish triggers and indicators so that I can warn our communities when we are in high-risk situations in response to climate change in our area. And this is important that we do this in preparation for what's to come, because our relatives in the Inuit nation and other Siberian nations, they're experiencing it firsthand, and they're impacted. Their cultural resources, their native plants, everything is endangered right now. The permafrost is melting. Their villages are being subsided, and so we need to be proactive and ahead of the curve. Southern California is going to have to respond to the climate change issues that are going on, and so was my motivation and focus in going back to get this master's and focusing on the climate change impacts, because in my community, there's not a whole lot of people that are being able to have the opportunity to study these things and to understand the data and to learn how to interpret the data. And so if I can learn that and go back to my community and train people like the things that I was doing, like the environmental directors, the resource managers, the tribal councils, the decision makers, if I can go back and train them and let them know this is how we are going to prepare for these environmental impacts that are coming for because from a Native perspective, we're always looking at 7 generations ahead. How can we protect our grandkids' grandkids? And so in that respect, that's where sovereignty comes in. So Indigenous people from everywhere, it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, you're Indigenous from somewhere. And so by respecting that truth and honoring that truth, each individual has the right to protect and prepare themselves and use their traditional environmental knowledge, the TEK and the information from their ancestors and the information from their culture to prepare themselves. And so in Southern California, how I've been working towards that at Cal State San Marcos teaching classes and here at UCSD and USD is to basically talk about what native plants do for our communities. So for sovereignty, we have food sovereignty, we have medicine sovereignty, we have utilitarian sovereignty. By planting these plants, understanding their uses, their properties, we can elevate our communities. We can empower people in our communities to understand how a simple plant can cure an ailment in the community, how multiple plants work together to create strong immunities within the garden, within the community, and how to utilize those plants. So we're really excited. I've been, sorry if I'm talking too fast, but I know it's only 7 minutes, so give me a little hand, Sam, if I'm talking into the next section. But basically, I've been involved with multiple native plant gardens, indigenous gardens, ethnobotanical gardens. It's an outdoor education setting. There's the biggest one I work with is Cal State San Marcos, where I teach community ethnobotany in the fall and medicinal healers in the spring with Dr. Bonnie Bade. And then that is a really large garden there where we actually go out and it's part of our lab and we bring back plants and we teach people how to work with the plants. We teach them how to access medicines, access foods. And here at UCSD, it's been great being part of the team since we started. We were able to hand select the plants based on the properties. I worked with the committee, the Kumeyaay Garden Committee since its inception, and we've been adding to our list. We've been adding the plants and the uses and the interpretive information, and then attaching curriculum. So we're talking about having like QR codes that we can add themes to and add a series of information to that's not only informative, but also training and can be used in classes as well. So professors on campus can leverage the Kumeyaay Garden to engage their students as well. And so we talked about it, but you know, it's still in the planning phase, but eventually what we'd like to see is a garden on each college. So right now we have it on one college. I'm working to get one on SIO, and And then we're gonna go from there. We're gonna try to see if we can get a Kumeyaay garden on each college. And we also talked about the goal of having one on every college would be to diversify the plant palette at each garden to represent what that college's focus is. And that way we expand and really highlight and celebrate how many plants there are. San Diego is the second most diverse county in the nation. We have the highest biodiversity. We are in a biodiversity hotspot in the nation and amongst the world. And we're looked at amongst the world for our archaeological history, 150,000 years of human habitation as documented by the Natural History Museum. If you're interested in that, you can look at the Kumeyaay site it's on their website. It's Natural History Museum of San Diego. And so all these things combine together to, I guess, empower students that San Diego is a treasure. Everything about San Diego is a treasure. And it's up to us to polish and display it so other people can understand the treasure if they don't have the scope to see it for what it is, and educating in that way and using these as an educational mechanism. I could go into so much depth about any of these subjects. I remember when we first planted the first plants in the garden, and I brought in the microbes, and I was like, okay, this is the soil. Like, we have to, bless the soil first. And so we brought in the beneficial bacteria and the microbes and all the microorganisms, because that is 70%. People see surface plants and surface gardens and they think, oh, that's great. People don't realize that 70% of the biomass is underneath the soil. So there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to celebrate. And I'm really thankful to be part of the project. I'm extending my my graduation date at SIO because I took on this additional task as emergency operations for Indian Health Council. So I'm going to extend my graduation date at SIO. So I'll be on campus longer so I can be part of the garden project longer. So I'm looking forward to us following through and seeing a lot of this to fruition. So thanks everybody for all of us, chipping in and everybody doing a great job. I really appreciate Sam and Jonathan and Azrael, always, reminding me and saying, hey, and coordinating the events. And the grand opening was really great and awesome. And maybe we can provide a link so people can watch some of that footage eventually. So I'll be looking forward to meeting more of you and working with more of you as we continue on this path. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all that information, Christy. That was really important to share. And again, we really appreciate all of your advice and counsel in this project. And we definitely would not be where we are without all of your help. Yeah, so we're getting a little bit close to our end time here. So we'll go through and just go, instead of breakout rooms, we'll just do a Q&A for the rest of the session, opening up to anyone that might have any questions for any of the panelists that talked today. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free.
So there's a question in chat for Professor Persephone from Jonna Dickinson. Jonna, would you like to ask that in person, or do you want me to just read it out loud for you?
I can ask it. So I was just wondering where you typically direct staff and faculty if they wanted to learn about the cultures of the various tribes of the Kumeyaay Nation.
Yeah, so I'm super careful about this. I teach a course and we, it's place-based. And so all of our work is actually with folks in the community. So for example, we work with Martha Rodriguez at Sequan. We, cleaned acorns for her and processed acorns with her. So I'm not Kumeyaay, so I don't think it's my place to share information. But what I do is there's videos. So I, have students watch videos that are online. There's a number, like three that I really use. There's one from Ada Saquon that's really great. It's like our history, our culture, our voice, I think. Christy probably knows, but I direct them to the online sources that the Kumeyaay folks have put out themselves. I also use books like Mike Connolly has his book, Kumeyaay, textbook 1. There's a Delphina Cuero book, an autobiography that's really great, especially if you're teaching ethnobotany sort of stuff. It's all in her words. And then there's also Blood of the Band, which is a book from David Toller, who is from Christie's tribe, San Pasqual, that I recommend. So I really just try to provide resources from Kumeyaay people themselves.
So how can you distinguish, I just wonder if you could speak a little bit about how to distinguish information that is accurate and that we should read from members of the Kumeyaay Nation versus information that has been, sort of colonized.
I'm gonna invite Christy. I'm gonna invite Christy, since she's Kumeyaay, to respond to that second part of the question, if you're okay with it, Christy.
Yeah, could you just repeat it real quick?
How to distinguish materials that are useful to read versus materials that represent a white perspective that perpetuates the issues associated with colonization?
That's really kind of difficult. There's not a whole lot of resources out there on the Kumeyaay Nation. California is just getting out, it's just starting to decolonize. So I would recommend the Kumeyaay Community College is a great resource. It's located on the Saquon Museum and Culture Center campus. It's part of the Kumeyaay College. It's a satellite of Kumeyaay College. That's where it's accredited under. And people can receive an AA in Kumeyaay Studies. It's one of the first AA programs for a specific nation. So the Kumeyaay Nation does have that AA program that people can receive. And just as a resource, also there's an office, and the administrator, the coordinator there does have books that are textbooks that are usually asked, the professors of the Kumeyaay College usually request. I would tend to lean towards those. The books that Percy mentioned, those are great books as well. Also at the San Diego Archaeological Society, it's located in the San Pasqual Valley, and they have a small library there and gift shop, and they have a few Kumeyaay items. There's a gift shop at the Saquon Museum, 910 Willow Glen Drive in El Cajon. It's near the Saquon golf course, and they have a gift shop there, and they also sell books at the gift shop. And I would say that that would be a good place to start. And we also talked about, Jonathan and Samuel and I talked about adding a if somebody could say the word, bibliographic page to the garden website, and for the QR codes, so that we could add a suggested library. So we talked about that for a few minutes at one of the meetings, and we said that because I get so many questions like that, like, where are the books? Where can I find them? Where's the book list? And I sometimes I refer people to my website that I use as a consultant, and then sometimes I refer them to college campus websites. So maybe we'll be able to consolidate that for this garden project, and actually do that sooner than later and add that to our project. So thanks for that question.
Yeah, that would definitely be something that we're working towards, and something that we're looking to have on our website information. I just checked, and it looks like we're coming up on time. Like Christy was saying, so many things that we can talk about, but really just not enough time that we can put it into today, unfortunately. But thank you all for attending today. If you have any further questions, we can drop our information in the chat as well to reach out. I'll put in my email right now real quick. But yeah, thank you. Thank you all for attending and listening. And thank you to all our panelists and community members that came in and shared your knowledge and advice. And thank you for supporting us through this project.